Well, welcome to the Menlo Midweek podcast, everybody. My name is Mark.
My name is Jessica.
And Phil's back with us today.
Woo!
I'm back.
The band's back together.
Trio.
We did it.
The Three Musketeers.
Yep.
I don't know.
That's what people call us.
Yeah.
Phil, I just want to say thank you. And Jessica, kind of thank you for not calling out my stupid mustache that I have
I
on.
actually was going to say I like it.
I was going to bring it up today in the
Big fan.
podcast, but you started it.
I feel like a year or two ago, this mustache would have been like, okay, did you lose a bet? But now they're kind of coming back into style, and I don't know how to
fully
feel
in.
about it.
Here's the thing you guys need to know about how I feel about Mark Morinishi. I have said to Mark, I wish I could be 5% as cool as you are.
Absolutely.
So I don't think there's something you could wear or do that wouldn't be this cool. So
I'm going to test this theory.
I was going to say, challenge
go for
accepted,
it.
Mark.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
my
for
goodness.
It. There was a guy in Colorado I knew well, mentored him for a bunch of years, young guy in his 20s named V, which you know he's cool if his first name is
Just
V.
an
Yeah.
initial.
But he was kind of the same way, like really cool guy. And he would be able to wear like super high fashion stuff that I just feel like I would laugh at myself if I wore.
Yeah.
And then he also had a thing for like NASCAR t-shirts, and weirdly he could pull both off. Yeah. So that's the Mark Morinishi
NASCAR
effect.
t-shirts.
I feel like Jubilee could pull
I
off
was
a NASCAR.
literally
Does he have one?
thinking he
He's
has
from Florida.
like-
He's got to have one.
Oh,
He's right. Isn't that a requirement of Florida? If you're from Florida, let us
He's
know.
just supporting his team.
yeah. I don't know if he wants to support that team, though.
I don't know. But I feel like he could also pull off
For
both,
sure.
I
Yeah.
think.
Absolutely.
Maybe-
I literally thought of him when you were saying that. I
Maybe
was like,
simultaneously.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Jubilee, our video guy, if you've never heard of him.
Yep.
Yes. That's so funny. Well, I think it was a really cool idea. It was kind of shared by our team here to have people that come on the podcast bring a little bit of something with them. We're in a newer studio space now that we are trying to decorate a little bit more, and we just want to have little tokens to remind people by as they're here. So Jess and I both haven't brought one in yet. Phil, this is your first time since we've instated this tradition. If you're watching along, you'll see some gifts from the San Mateo team from our campus
Yay.
takeover. We have a kid's t-shirt from a long time ago. Junior brought in a pedal for a guitar, and Matt brought in a really great looking laundry detergent bottle.
It's fantastic. And if you haven't been listening to the campus takeovers, you should go listen to them because they're great teams.
Yeah.
It was fun to listen to all of those. I listened to the San Mateo one this morning, and I was mentioning to Mark before we started today, I think what's really fun about San Mateo is that team has been together, all the same people for a while.
Yeah.
And so you get to kind of hear just a level of familiarity with one another that translated really well. So,
Yeah.
and you'll learn why there's a laundry detergent bottle back there, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fun. I get to listen to and edit some of the podcasts that we do. So I heard like the first 15 minutes of just the mics being on, and it was the exact same kind of conversation as when the mics were on.
Yeah.
Just Junior and Jenny just like chirping at each other,
Yeah.
and Matt,
Yeah. So fun.
Matt trying not to be the smartest guy in the room and like playing it off like I'm
Yeah.
not brilliant.
Yeah.
She does a pretty good job of most of the time.
That's
I
definitely
tell
like,
Matt, I tell Matt all the time, like, you don't have to pretend to be the smartest guy in the room. You are. Like, it's just be yourself, bro.
Try having him be your boss
Ooh,
and
jeez.
him saying things to me. I'm like, you're going to have to translate that for
Break
me.
that down.
Yeah.
And then him and his best friend, who also used to work here, they would get together, and I would just sit there like, I feel like the stupidest person that's ever walked the face of the earth, because it was like big word after big word. Yeah, big word.
Yeah.
See, I can't even speak normally. I just proved myself right.
That's great.
Oh my goodness. More coffee.
That's
It's
fun.
good.
Well, Jess or Phil, who wants to go first?
I
Or
can
I
go
can go
first
first.
because I don't want to follow anybody. Because
Okay.
mine's me. So for those of you who are watching, this is a turkey mug. If you have watched Friends at all, you know this is where this is from. So there's an episode. They're kind of known for their Thanksgiving episodes, and one of the episodes, the character Monica, it's like a flashback episode, but she puts a turkey on her head to make her
yes.
boyfriend Chandler laugh.
Yes.
And she puts on these big glasses and a little fez hat.
Yes.
And then does a
Yeah.
little dance to make him laugh, and it's the first time he says "I love you" to her. So that was kind of like a famous scene. So one of my former students, actually at the Mountain View campus, shout out Leah Lowe, bought me this mug. The little hat comes off, so you
Look
can
at
drink
that.
out of it.
Okay.
I've never used it because it's just so cute that I just have it on display
This feels like
in
a
my
pretty
room.
big thing for you to let us
I
put on
know.
display here.
Yeah.
Are you
you're
okay?
welcome. Well, Mark said we can swap
You can
them
swap
out
them out at
eventually.
any
Good, all
time.
right,
So
good.
it's just sits
That's
on my desk,
awesome.
so it'll still be here. So
I know
if
the
you've-
scene, and
Yeah.
I'd seen it, but I like couldn't place it. But now,
get it.
like, that's an
Yeah.
amazing mug.
isn't that cool?
That is so
She
fun.
said that she had like found one and then it was like sold out, and so then months later she like found it again and
love
got
that.
it for me.
That's so great.
If you know me, if you've listened to this at all, I've quoted Friends before. I talk about it all the time. It's a great TV
That
show.
is like
and
a-
so it's just very me.
That is you.
And
I love it.
also brought another mug. This is also a Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the one I'm drinking out of it. I'm not leaving it
Yeah,
here
what's
because
that
it's
guy's
Crate and
name?
Barrel. This is the Holiday Armadillo.
That's right. Isn't it? Wasn't it Hanukkah or something? Right? Because it was for.
Yes.
Was he trying to
because
be
he couldn't
non-
find
Oh yeah, that's right,
a Santa Claus costume.
That's right.
So he just became the Holiday Armadillo because he was trying to teach his son about Hanukkah, but then his
Right,
son
right,
wanted
yep.
Santa. But then he got to teach his son about Hanukkah.
That's good. Somebody for a staff Christmas party in Colorado found a like super legit holiday armadillo thing online.
Oh,
and
they're all over the place. Yeah.
and showed up to our Christmas party as the holiday armadillo, like essentially in character. It
now
was-
I've got the wheel spinning
Now
for our
Jess is gonna
Christmas
do
party.
that.
It
what
was
we're doing.
it was awesome. It was awesome. He's a younger guy, and I was like, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but anytime I interact with like late teens or early 20s that are like, oh, The Office is my favorite show, or like Friends, and I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
you were not alive, you know? But that's how it all works now. They binged it in 2 days. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
just so you know, we had to wait 7 days for the next episode, and we had commercials. I just
Yeah.
want you to like
Yeah.
know our
And
struggle.
then we had to wait like 4 months
Right.
between each
This is
season.
our
Right.
version of what
Yeah.
our parents did to us, where they were like, I walked to school uphill both ways in the snow without
Perfect.
shoes. Like,
Yeah.
that's this is that.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did you bring, Mark?
So I also brought something coffee themed. Surprised that Jess and I are on similar
Shocker.
wavelengths. So this, for those that are listening, how would you describe this? I guess it's a copper-ish looking
Kind of looks like a
coffee device
Pour?
that's made.
Yeah.
It's actually a fun story. Missy and I were traveling,
Can I hold it?
and yeah, of course.
Okay.
And we were in Greece, in Athens, and I really wanted Greek coffee, and that was the one they make in the sand, and
So
they use
cool.
this thing
Yeah.
to put it in the hot sand. It bubbles up the coffee, and then the grounds rise to the top when it gets too hot, and then they pull it away, and that's how they brew it, and then they pour it into your cup. You're not supposed to, spoiler alert, stir it or shake it. I didn't know that, so I just got a mouthful of grounds the first time I drank it. But they settle down in the
'cause they
bottom, and
settle.
that's how they brew their coffee.
Wow.
So I
Whoa.
knew that we all loved coffee, and that's
That is
something
so
that I
cool.
appreciate about both of you. And so I wanted to bring something in.
So that you
That has
got
to do with
that
coffee.
when you were in Greece.
So that was in Greece.
That looks like it's like something my great grandma would have used. Like
Is
it
she
just looks
Greek?
very old. No, just like the oldness of it.
Yeah.
It
As a
matter
looks
of
very
fact.
old.
I don't know how old it is. I don't think it's antique by any means,
Okay.
but this is like a very traditional device that they
Yeah.
use. So it probably is based on something they've used forever.
I don't want you to get uncomfortable with my infatuation of you, but I would say I feel like I could see you pulling off just drinking coffee from that. Don't you feel like you could just like
Absolutely.
being super low key about it? Like we're all sitting with our cups.
Yeah.
I just have like a pile of hot sand in my top drawer of my desk, and
I mean,
using
just
this.
hold up for the camera the coffee cup you are actually using today.
Yeah,
I just feel
honestly.
like we're not.
That's true.
We're still
Yeah.
sort of on brand.
Yeah.
You know, this
Yeah.
is like the Menlo Park version.
This
of
is a
that
gift
cup.
from the Summers, actually.
Oh,
so
look at that!
they know me so
Shout
well.
out, friend of
Yeah.
the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Phil, what did
and
you bring?
Phil brought a framed picture of Mark that he wants
That's
him to
exactly.
sign.
This is getting weird.
Sorry.
That was good.
Security.
I wasn't ready for that.
I got him.
Yeah. So in message delivery world, there are times where you will use a prop or an object, and we were doing Summer at the Movie series years ago, and one of the movies that I did was Iron Man, the first Iron Man, which I really like that movie, and so I found this like kit online. And this is like multiple reasons I like it. One, I like Iron Man. Two, it's kind of a fun metaphor that I got to use it for. And three, when the kit showed up, I was like, I hate puzzles. I hate them. I'm dyslexic, so following directions and putting grids and stuff together, it just does not make sense in my head. Thankfully, my son, Greer, our oldest son, who is now 13, and I think he might have been all of 10 when this happened, this is like a wildly complicated thing to put together. And he was like, I'll do it. I did not help him one time. And an hour later, he came back and he was like, "Here you go, Dad." And I was like, "What?" And so and then you just hit this little button, and it glows. So I got
That's so cool.
Yeah. So anyway, like I get to be thankful for my son and be thankful for a cool sermon illustration and be thankful.
Do you remember
for,
what the
That's so cool.
illustration was?
Yeah, so I talked about how for a lot of us, like the reason that Tony Stark has to wear this in his chest is to keep all this shrapnel out of his heart.
Yep.
And so I talked about how sometimes in life, rather than dealing with the stuff we don't want to deal with in our life, we'll use pride and an illusion of control, like our chest plate, to keep things we don't want to deal with in our life as far away from us as possible. But rather than putting this in our heart, God wants to be in our heart and let that stuff flow, that he can actually filter it out and help us process it well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fun.
So fun.
There you go.
Well, thanks, Phil.
Yeah, of course.
That'll look really great.
Thanks, Greer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Greer.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
Yeah.
13-year-old, our youngest listener.
Awesome.
I bet he isn't actually. It's funny, like I'm sure you guys have this happen. People will come up to me, sometimes even kids, and they'll be like, "I listened to you on a podcast." I'm like, "What?" Yeah, okay, cool.
I've never had a kid do that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've had people
I
do
didn't
that.
think
yeah.
they listen to podcasts. Do they?
Apparently, it might be like when they're in the car with their parents.
Oh, yeah.
So if here's my commitment. If you're a kid and you listen to the podcast,
Define kid.
let's say sub 10, 10 or under. If you're 10 or under, let's have a competition that all the kids
Yeah.
that are 10 or under,
Yeah.
you submit a thing, picture,
Sure.
object, whatever that you want on the
Yes.
bookcase,
Yes.
and we'll put up the best ones.
Totally. Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
hey, here for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a lot. We pressured. It seemed like that was spontaneous, but we talked about that in a production meeting before.
I think we played it off
Text
pretty
us
well.
at 650-600-0402 if you are listening to this and you're like, my kid is at Mountain View and wants to give you something, and
we're
we
ready.
will make sure to come get it.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Well, Phil, we just concluded our longest series ever, potentially.
Well, for him,
For me,
For you.
yeah, it was a long series.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think typically we do series that are more like 4 to 6 weeks, and there's strategic reasons for it. Like you think about where people are typically going to step into a series, or when there are moments of transition in the year naturally. So think the fall, or Christmas time, or the first of the year, or Lent, or and so usually kind of this like couple month runway is a little unique. And then you have this thing in the summertime I learned at Menlo where just everybody leaves. And people told me about it, but I was like, I've heard of that before, and you're like, oh, everybody. And they don't leave like to go to the ocean because they're here. They leave and they're like, we're going to go to Europe for a month and a half. And I'm like, whoa. And shout out to Menlo folks. They still stay connected.
Yeah.
Like they're watching online, they're connecting with their life group. But it's just it's a unique thing. So it gives us a chance to have kind of a longer conversation because we're not assuming that everybody is with us every single week. And then there are, the crew that is. And so hopefully they feel like they get a thoughtful, comprehensive conversation that's longer than what we're able to do during the year.
Yeah.
So
Jess and I were talking the other day how we're going to have to do a mobile podcast at some point because at this point, I think 23% of our listeners are global.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's probably because for the summer,
Right,
we have
right.
people all over the world.
Yeah, leaves.
But I mean, any excuse you can use to
Yeah.
get to.
Sure. Yeah.
Let us know where you are. We'll come visit you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Speaking of budgets, no, I'm just kidding.
That's right. We're looking for some benefactors.
Yeah. I really appreciate the announcement that we made too about how when people partner with us and
Yeah.
give, they're also giving to things, giving to organizations, and part of that was Maui Relief. And
sure.
so I know that's been heavy on a lot of people's hearts. It's that place. There's so many ties that people at Menlo have to Maui and even to Lahaina. I mean, you were just there.
Right.
My family, extended family's there. So I'm so glad that we were able to help in that way. And I really appreciated how you framed that and how you set that up.
Well, and Dan, who is the pastor at First Pres in Honolulu, is a former staff member at Menlo, just a great man. And he had texted me kind of just in the back and forth conversation about what was going on. And he said, hey, here's what we're doing. If Menlo wants to be a part of it, let me know. And I know that Cheryl and the team had been kind of thinking about and talking about how we would respond.
Right.
And Cheryl was on vacation, but I had like sent a message to her and Scott, and I was somewhere else. And but it was literally a text chain within 10 minutes. She had like reached out. She's like, "Hey, this is the number that we can do. Here's how we do it. And it was done." And then so I just think that I think that the church is supposed to respond that way. You know, when there's need, the church is supposed to go, "Hey, we say yes, and then we figure out how." And really the figure out how part at Menlo is the generosity of people that call Menlo home and have a plan to support what God's doing here financially. And I think that, you know, sometimes that's an easy decision, right? Like when things are good, even in your own personal financial life, I bet you have some instances like that. That's why you create margin, right? So that you'll hear me say this line eventually, we should never resist a generous impulse. Like as a person, as a follower of Jesus, I think one of our spiritual practices that I would just say, never resist a generous impulse. If you feel like something inside of you is saying, cover that check, cover it. If you feel like something inside of you says, I should help that family, help that family. And I think one of the disciplines financially we can do is to live life with margin. Because when we do that, we can make those decisions. But when that decision's easy when you're doing it from your surplus. That decision's hard when you're not. And so I think candidly at Menlo right now, we are in a period of adjustment financially. And so we will finish our fiscal year here in a week and a half or so. And we are significantly behind the expected giving that we thought we would have at the beginning of the year. And there's lots of reasons for that. And we've made adjustments and all that stuff. But I think it would be very easy in seasons like this to say, you know what, that like 10% that we give away as a church to be generous elsewhere, let's just pull that back. Right. And, I think one of the things that I'm proud about is that our board's like, no, that part's unshakable. We're doing that. And this year, we've given significantly more than 10% to partnerships and organizations around the world. So this is one more opportunity to do that. And it's just been a really, I think, special opportunity for us to care for a church and care for a community that the need's not going to go away tomorrow, right? And I think that's one of the great things when you have a relationship with organizations that you're supporting. It's not just the financial investment, it's the relational investment to say, hey, we're praying for you, we care about you. In a month when you need something else, we're still here. In 6 months when you need something else, we're still here. In 2 years, when the world has moved on, but you're still trying to, we're still here. And so this was a great first step to be able to do that. And our family was in Lahaina literally 2.5 weeks ago. And I mean, I'll be honest, like I don't take a bunch of pictures with my phone. I try to like be present in the moment. And I have a handful of pictures from downtown Lahaina that like with our family. And I'm like, I wish I would have taken more pictures, and I'll treasure those pictures, right? I got a hat that says Lahaina on it. Like there are things like that you just kind of go like, this is surreal that it's just for now kind of off the map. But the people who live there aren't, and finding a place that's safe for them and gives them answers for what's next, we're certainly praying as they navigate those difficult conversations.
Yeah. Well, our thoughts and our prayers go out to those that are affected, and thank you if you have given and supported what Menlo's doing here, because you've directly helped and support those that are there.
Absolutely.
So, and that's just, I mean, that theme of trying to address needs that might not go away tomorrow, that's a lot of what this series has been about as well. We're trying to solve the problem of people re-examining their faith through a lifelong process and trying to get in the mindset of how to do that without being hypercritical or judgmental. And that's not an easy thing for us to learn. So, Phil, what have you learned in this series? I mean, we have been in this for 8 weeks now, 9 weeks now. A long time.
8 or 9.
8 or 9, long time.
Yeah.
And so we've concluded that this weekend. And so, did it go like how you wanted it to go? Like, was this planned out, and you
Were you
knew?
tired of it at the end?
Now that we're at the end.
So, I mean, I think that if you're listening to the podcast, you're interested in this kind of stuff probably. It was really 2 series. So we called it one, but there was like a longer series at the beginning that followed a pretty classic form. So is it true? What was the real story? You know, et cetera, et cetera. And we had the flannel graph on stage. There was a model that we were following for the first 5 weeks, and then we made this shift to first kind of this like bigger conversation around war and conflict, and then an individual in Solomon, and then this pretty unique talk at the end. This is not the talk the talk that I gave this last weekend was not the final talk I thought I would give at the beginning of the series. I had a different talk in mind. And as the series took shape, especially when it's this long, you're kind of like, hey, I think there's an opportunity for us to hopefully give a talk that you kind of hope and pray you can give in a way that has some shelf life, that maybe somebody, they're like, well, I didn't need this now, but they're going to need it in 6 months. Or, hey, I have some friends, and I've already heard about this. I have some friends that would never come to a church again, but they actually really need to hear this. And so you kind of just, in the providence of God, you go, oh, God, whatever you need to do with this. I got a note last night from somebody who came to church with kids. One of the kids, pretty young, one of the kids, pretty passionate follower of Jesus, one really not interested. And when I talked about how doubt could be a part of your faith, she like perked up and was in for the rest of it.
Oh, awesome.
And they had brought 2 friends with them who had, I think, just come into the States from China and were not Christians. And for them, like, you kind of think, whoa, this is a very different introduction to faith, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's that or somebody at a campus, like processing a conversation that they've tried to push away for a while, I hope, what I'm trying to often do in situations like this is to create the middle ground where we can really find hope in a relationship together. There's a group of people that go, hey, deconstruction isn't a phase, it's the destination. My faith is gone forever. And then there's a group of people that I think go, deconstruction is the enemy. Just ask no questions. And so to say, no, inspecting our faith is really important. As a matter of fact, I would say it's necessary. And so if you're like, I'm never going to do that, you should do that. But it's also a phase. So if you've done that, and then you're kind of like, well, I walked away from, I'm saying like there's more to discover. There's a next step for you if you're willing to take it. And so hopefully we did that. And, I never want to speak about people or a group of people with this sense that like they're not in the room with us, that they're not listening. And so trying to be kind and intellectually honest and charitable, I hope we were able to achieve that. But yeah, I think the series was really fun. Shout out to Jessica Havens for the genesis of the series. But there's some great talks. I think like a bunch of folks spoke in it. Shout out to Adam Hendricks, Scott, Cheryl, myself. And so that was fun too, to be able to hear kind of different takes and voices around each of those stories. And then, it'll be fun because I was getting notes from people like, why didn't you do this one? Why didn't you do this one? And so like,
You did the whole Bible.
solve this
on it.
problem.
yeah,
for
like
me.
we're just doing a whole, but I think, that's fun for me. I think that I'm having to recalibrate at Menlo that when I say, hey, here's a book that I'm recommending, a bunch of people are going to read it. That's unique if you don't know that. And then I think some of the ideas around, when I was in Colorado, the kind of core assumption was most people that were most likely to be in church would identify as Republican. And I think that assumption still kind of lives in me sometimes, even though I intellectually know it's not true. It's kind of muscle memory.
Sure.
And so at Menlo, it's I would say it's much more divided, much more even split. And so just naming that for people, because we still do kind of socialize with people that affiliate in the same political sphere as we do. So trying to, poke at that without without
Dropping it.
without becoming off-putting. So.
Yeah. And I was thinking of that as you're just sharing, because I think in this message you said something, there's going to be a time in this message where you're going to email me, and now's that time.
Yeah, that was so good.
And there are some people online that were like, I'm just going to send him an email, like, just because.
Yeah. You said to email you, but
Yeah. Yep.
So how did you originally think you're going to wrap up this series? And then how did you get to, and why did you get to how you actually ended up wrapping up the series?
I had a hunch that at the end of the series there would be either some stories that we weren't able to finish the way we wanted, or some, I think probably like the common themes of, hey, when we think about a biblical narrative, just a reminder, here's how biblical narratives work. And as you study from now on in the way you think about biblical narratives, here's the lessons we've learned over the last several weeks together that you can apply into the way you understand the scriptures. And by the way, this is really one genre, like of multiple genres in the Bible. So you can't take the narrative study approach and bring that to the letters of the New Testament or apocalyptic literature in Revelation or Daniel or wisdom literature in Proverbs, they all take a different set of lenses in the way we think about and specifically interpret them. We can take them, we can understand the scriptures literally without taking them literally, because not every genre is designed to be taken that way. So anyway, so that I think that's probably more early on in the series the way that I thought it was going, but I think we were just kind of nibbling around the edges of this deconstruction conversation, and I was like, I think we've kind of set the table. And I did a lot of conversations, especially around hypocrisy and politics, kind of during 2020, 2021, a little bit in 2022 in Colorado. And I had really never done a talk like that here. And it felt like this was not going to feel like it was out of left field. I dropped enough hints along the way that I felt like this was a good setup, and people would be ready for it. And people have responded really well. So
Great.
You talked about how deconstruction, and I think you mentioned this on the podcast before, it's not a new thing. Like, it's just been called spiritual formation. What do you think it is that changed it? That why do we use the term deconstruction nowadays, and why is it wildly popular? And why is it no one calling it spiritual formation anymore?
yeah, I think part of that is because, every generation wants to believe, out of their own pride, that they are unique and different. And so that's why, like, we wear the same clothes stylistically of decades ago, but we're doing it just different enough, and like
My NASCAR shirt's 30 years old.
yeah, right. And so I think
Nice
for people
throwback.
that have been around for a while, people in their 50s, 60s and beyond, they're like, I remember wearing that when I was 20 years old. Like, you guys are not new or different, and so I think deconstruction is probably a version of that, sort of the nonconformist tendency of our 20s. I think we're all sort of wrestling with what our own independence looks like in that. I also think that sort of this identity as the new idolatry thing means that there are very few transitional components of our life that we don't find a community and feel cultural pressure to stay in that community for. So it feels disloyal in our cultural moment to say, here's the thing I'm going through, but I will not always be there. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to be something else. No. Now that I'm going through it, there are other people going through it, and going through it becomes how we are. And I would say what modern identity movement does is it asks us to take how we are and turn it into who we are. And that's a weight that our identity actually is not designed to carry. Our identity is who we are. Our most core identity, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, is that you're created in the image of God with infinite dignity, value, and worth. And so, like, I would say that when we remove that, we're kind of sort of grabbing in the dark for what is our other identity option. And I think for some of us, if we grew up in faith, and there's good reasons for it, like, I don't want to poo-poo it, like, hey, I experienced church hurt or trauma. I saw hypocrisy head on. Faith was seen as this opportunity without any doubt whatsoever, and I couldn't relate to that. I watched politics eat church alive for me. Like, I get it. I totally get it. But rather than getting to the other side of that, that just becomes the end goal. And then I think, we could, speaking of politics, right, we can look at basically any other sphere and we can find some of these same sort of, let's call them identity replacements, these pseudo-identities. And I think in that landscape, deconstruction has become another pseudo-identity. It's my quick take.
Yeah. Wow. I think part of it, too, is just the resources we have at our fingertips now, too. Like, being able to hear from different speakers and read different books and read different articles and all of that stuff makes it so easy to hear all the different perspectives and go, wait, which one do I actually want to latch onto?
And I think if you do that, especially online, and you're unaware of what is happening underneath it, it's very easy. Like, the algorithms are giving you more of what you are watching or what you are listening to. And so this was really being popularized when the new atheist movement came around, kind of post 9/11. Guys like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. And what happened, you're right, like, I no longer had to go to that college to listen to that lecture of that prominent atheist. I could go listen, and it was like I could go listen to brutal takedowns of Christian arguments by those particular voices. And then I think what you've watched is the new atheist movement has kind of become the old atheist movement. Like it's just not as prominent as it was before. But I think in its place kind of grew deconstructionism. In its place grew progressive Christianity. And I would say if you are watching things, reading things, listening to things, and it feels like, how could anyone disagree with this? You are probably in an echo chamber. And so like being or an echo chamber, being able to step back and go, hey, what are the voices that I'm not hearing? Because there are like very intelligent, very thoughtful people on both sides of all of these conversations. And so if you're like, well, only stupid people could think, believe, etc., you are probably only listening to a caricatured version of the other side.
That's really fascinating. It reminds me of how you shared after the first message in the series about the creation story, or maybe it wasn't the first, but earlier message, the creation narrative, and having conversations back to back with people who were thinking, how could other people believe this? And they were flipping sides the whole time.
For sure. Yep. Like I could love anybody, but like young earthers, I could be in a relationship with anybody, but theistic evolutionists, it's pretty amusing.
What else would you want? Did you leave anything off the table?
I think the intro that I used was this metaphor of houses, and the way that people in Northern California, because there's no more like real estate available, the way we all think about houses and they get treated. But the other opening illustration that I tinkered with, and I had actually written, which is not normally me, actually, usually when I'm putting pen to paper, that's what I'm going to say. But I had written it all out, was I had a friend whose father-in-law who'd passed away was very, very wealthy, and he was on a huge farm, and he's like taking me around, and we go into this old barn, and he was a car collector. And he was like, let me show you this thing. So there's all these classic cars, beautiful, dozens of them. And he pulls off a sheet of one of the cars, and it's an original Model T. Whoa. And I was like, what? I mean, it's crazy. If you've never seen one, go Google it. It's amazing. And here's the thing that I think was like so hard for me as a car person. His father-in-law had been gone for several years, and it was obvious that no one had touched any of these cars. And what I knew is none of those cars could run now.
Yep.
And so they were all going to need massive work if you ever wanted to use them again. But like, it would have not taken that much work. And for his father-in-law, it was probably a labor of love. Like he wanted to do the work to take those cars out and drive them around and do the things that keep them going. And I think for some of us, the reason that we deconstruct is because like somewhere along the way, our faith just becomes a car in our collection, like a collector car. And we drive it less and less. Maybe we drive it on Sundays. Maybe we take it out for special occasions. But then after a while, it kind of sits in the back and we put a sheet on it. And just like that Model T, the less we use it, the more work it's going to take to begin using it again. And I think for a lot of people that drift into deconstruction or drift out of faith entirely, I think that is their faith has become a collector's item. And so I think trying to challenge, especially Christians who would say, I am a Christian, that's the way I identify, but my life does not identify me as that. Just this cautionary tale of like, let's not let it become this thing in the corner. Like our faith is designed to be a daily driver. It's supposed to be the thing that we're in every day. And so I hope, I hope that people got a sense of that as well. But that was so directed towards kind of like one person, and I felt like the house stuff was going to let me build a bigger base for more audience. So,
yeah. And if you're listening to this and you need someone to drive your classic Porsches, you can text us right now.
Absolutely, please.
And I would love for you to do so.
Yeah, I'm a
Sounds
really good
great.
driver.
I'm a really good driver.
Yeah.
I'd be terrified to do that. Don't text me.
There's somebody at Menlo who I've gotten to know them well, and they have a beautiful old Porsche actually, and I've always just kind of seen it and been like, I'm just cool. I don't say anything. Whatever. It sits in their garage, and he was like, "Hey, offer's open. Anytime you want to drive it." And I was like, but the same kind of like I really want to, and I'm also a little scared. Yeah. So yeah.
It wasn't a classics classic, but during COVID I was house sitting not really house sitting. I was living in someone's house as they were in Hawaii.
Nice.
Doing COVID there with their family, and they had a couple cars that needed to be driven as well. And every time I drove one of their, it's like one was like a 70s Porsche, one was like a Land Cruiser. So like comfortable, not like super classics,
Right,
but
right.
like more
Classic enough.
Yeah, classic enough for me to get a little
weren't
like
Toyota
nervous.
Camrys.
Yeah, they weren't my 4Runner.
Yeah.
or Missy's Corolla.
My 1984 Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, exactly.
My first
Nice,
gold
nice.
car, yeah.
But I remember every time I drove it, I was like, I'm getting a little nervous here.
Don't mess this
Yeah.
up. Don't mess this
Don't
up.
mess this
Yeah.
up. Don't mess this up. That was so fun. Well, Phil, where are we headed from here? So, deconstruction, we've done it. We've solved the mysteries. Now everyone
We're all
is now fully
deconstructed.
constructed
Yep.
again.
Yeah. Reconstruction commence.
Yeah.
That's the next series, yeah.
Yeah. We actually did a series in Colorado called Reassembly Required. That was kind of
that's
about
nice.
that. Yeah. So, and I would just give one more shout out to that book that I mentioned called After Doubt by AJ Swoboda. If you get to the end of this and you're like, I really want to dig more into some of this, it was just an excellent book. It feels very current. If you're on the West Coast, he's a professor up in Portland, and so I think he just speaks with a level of intellectual honesty, and I would say what feels like cultural awareness.
Can I give a shout out too?
Yes, of course.
You mentioned Mere Christianity
Yeah,
by
yeah.
Lewis. Classic. If you haven't read that, you have to, or read it again. But there's a series on YouTube that animates the entire book.
Oh, wow.
So think about Bible Project,
What?
like
That's
how they
so cool.
animate the stories. There's something very similar to that,
Dude, I
only
wanna see
for
that.
Lewis.
Yeah.
It's not I think there are a few chapters that are left out.
Yeah.
But for a layman like me to actually understand what Lewis is trying to say, it's
That's
perfect.
so cool. You're gonna drop it in the show notes?
Sure.
I'm
That's
literally
cool.
texting
I'll
you
link-
right now to remember.
Yeah,
to
I'll
do
link
that.
I'll link it to the first video or to the playlist in which it is.
That's
but
great. That's
It's
really good.
a fantastic resource.
That's really good. Yeah, so over the next few weeks, here's what we've got going on. This weekend is big weekend. So we have the Find Your Spot Volunteer Fair happening at all of our campuses, which is in preparation for us to launch third services at all of our campuses in a little over a month. And so that'll be super fun and hopefully have a great vibe around campuses. And if you've been kind of wondering, like, hey, we're going to get involved, we're going to take a step towards greater involvement, but we want to wait till the kids get back in school. We want to wait till we're back from summer plans. Like, we see you. We're ready for it. And so we're going to be challenging folks. And the team's done a great job of helping that first step of getting involved become, I think, a much smoother step. And so hopefully you'll experience that. And I will be talking about kind of this focus that we're going to have this year of celebrating Menlo's 150th birthday. And not just, hey, here's some cool stuff about the past, but because these things have been true of our past, this is kind of in our bones as a church, is in our DNA. And so what does that mean for the future? And so I think that's going to be great. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the kind of volunteer fair that we'll hold at our campuses. We've got a couple other things that we're going to have a chance to forecast that we're going to be doing as a part of Menlo 150 that you won't want to miss. And then the week after, we'll start a series called Teach Us to Pray. And I think it's just like when people go, hey, I just don't know how to pray. I think that's such a fun question or a fun challenge because Jesus' disciples who were with him all the time asked the exact same question. They were like, hey, Jesus, can you show us how to pray? And so I'm sure to him, he was like, I do it all the time, fellas.
Yeah.
Like,
you not been paying
have you not
attention?
been here? Have you been dozing?
Judas, I'm looking at you.
Right. Yeah. Jesus, tune in, buddy. Tune in. And so he gives this prayer. I mean, what's funny is Jesus specifically says, don't just pray things for repetition. And then we take the prayer that he's used to teach us and we use it repetitively, which it's a different conversation. But that prayer you know of, the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That prayer is actually like a table of contents for the way we can think about prayer. What are the components of prayer that we should offer? And so we're going to take a few weeks in that series and hopefully just give people a framework of prayer. And what's really great, I think, about Jesus' framework of prayer is that it is applicable for someone who's learning to pray for the very first time. Like it will be extremely helpful for you. And it's applicable, right? The text is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It is helpful and applicable to the person that's been following Jesus for 70 years. And they're going, man, my prayer life has stalled, right? God's going to surface for you something out of that lesson that he gave to his disciples 2,000 years ago that can help you take another step in your prayer life as well. So we'll be in that immediately following this weekend.
That's great.
I have a series pitch.
I'm ready.
It's called There's No Stupid Questions. And it goes through the disciples and all their stupid questions that
good.
they asked Jesus.
Yeah, I like it.
That's
Hey, Jesus, can I sit next to your right hand in your kingdom? What? What are you at? Stop talking. Yeah.
Stop talking.
Yeah.
That's really fun. I'm very looking forward to that prayer series. This time right here, candidly, is probably my favorite time of the week. But we've also been doing a 9:15 to 9:45 on Monday mornings where our volunteer prayer team will come in. It's open to central staff, whoever else wants to join. And that's creeping up on my favorite time of the week.
Oh.
Nice. Wow.
And so one of the things that I've just loved and really appreciate is we have someone in there, Carol. She's great. And how she prays and how she talks to God is like someone that's talked to God for like 50 years.
Oh, I love it.
And I don't even think like she's cognizant of it.
She is now because you just said it on the podcast.
But it's just like I want to be that when I'm like I want to have that kind of prayer life. Yeah, it's just awesome. So for those that might be starting that journey or don't know how to start that journey, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Very exciting.
Phil, anything else? Anything you want to leave us with?
I mean, I think I would say that if the process of deconstruction is not a thing that in your life you are currently wrestling with, there is someone in your life who is. And the encouragement that I would give is sometimes we don't listen to things we don't think are relevant to us. But if you didn't listen this weekend, or maybe you kind of listened and it was just in one ear out the other, those principles of the role that doubt and overly political faith and hypocrisy can actually play in our spiritual sort of reconstruction, those are really important principles. And whatever your process is for thinking about and concentrating, I would do that for those things so that when natural conversations come up with that kid that you used to see in student ministry or that family that you used to see around a lot and then COVID hit and now they don't show up anymore and they're not at another church. They're just kind of doing life without God as a core framework. Not so that you can preach to them, but so hopefully you can offer directed compassion to them. This is, I hope, something that God will use. And then we're getting ready because at the end of September, so after the Teach Us to Pray series, we are aligning with a whole bunch of churches in the Bay Area to do an Exploring Christianity series that may be a great opportunity to invite some of those same people. If in the meantime you're praying for them, you're investing in them relationally, that you might be able to invite them to that kind of an experience. So I know we're all in the throes of here's what I need and here's what's in front of us for our family, and it's a very easy time to just kind of hunker down. But who is on the line for you to not do that for? Who in your life are you willing to be inconvenienced that they might be able to find faith or find it again? So that would be my final takeaway from the series.
Great.
It's kind of a cool like on-ramp almost of with the Teach Us to Pray series. We've been talking a little bit about like we want to teach our folks to pray specifically for the Explore God series and for the people who are going to come and for the people who we want to invite. So I just love that it's like kind of connected because I've been having those same thoughts of like who, I have people in my life that I'm like, they're not going to come, but that's not up to me.
Right.
Like if I'm not sitting there praying for that, then that's not going to happen. And so I'm excited to like take the opportunity of 4 weeks of Teach Us to Pray. And like you said, like I've been a Christian my whole life and I could for sure use a refresher on prayer. And so using that series to take some time, not only to learn about prayer, but also to then apply it and pray for the next series and all the people who, not even just at Menlo, but I think it's like at least 50 churches that are doing this series across the Bay Area. And just what a cool opportunity that we get to spend time in prayer, prepping for that series. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, well, I think about that portion of the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we go, well, what's God's will? And then you jump over to 1 Peter. It says he's not willing that any would perish, but that all would come to know him, And God's perfect will, this idea that like he died so that people could actually turn to and know him. And so we know that the personal decision that someone makes to follow Jesus is not in our hands. We're responsible for seed planting, and God is the one that actually does the growth. But I think sometimes we go, well, I'm not really responsible for growth, so I guess I do nothing. And it's like, whoa, let's actually read through this. And not only are we praying that God would change someone's circumstance, change their heart, change their openness to a different kind of life with him in the middle of it, we're also, honestly, I think, praying for our heart, that we would have the aptitude, the desire, the appetite to be able to care enough about someone's not just temporal next step in this life, but their eternal destiny, that we would be inconvenienced, that we would be willing to take a risk. And I think Menlo has been around 150 years because a lot of men and women have taken a lot of risks, and now it's our turn.
Great. Well, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm excited for Sunday, volunteer fair.
Yeah.
What campus are you going to be at?
I will be at the Mountain View campus.
Ooh, I'll be down in Saratoga, so come say hi.
Okay.
Really excited to talk to all the people.
Yes. I'm very excited.
Learn about all the things.
That's good. And I'll be in Menlo Park.
Great.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, that's where I'll be.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Text us if you need anything. See ya.
Have a great day.